Counting down to kickoff, Rutgers opens the season early. They've got a Thursday game here on the Big Ten Network. Head coach Greg Schiano, already the winningest head coach in Rutgers program history. Expectations on campus are pretty darn high for the Scarlet Knights this year, and with good reason. Their schedule is favorable. They got the returning leader in rushing yards from last year in the Big Ten, Kyle Monangai. So with that in mind, we're going to turn to basically an award segment for you. I'm going to throw out some categories. You're going to tell me who it is. And this is clever producing because we're starting off with who you think will be the coach of the year. And it is?
I believe it'll be Greg Schiano from Rutgers. And the reason why is not because I think Rutgers is going to win the Big Ten Conference. There's some other coaches in the Big Ten who would likely need to win the entire conference to be awarded Big Ten Coach of the Year, Ryan Day or Dan Lanning, and they may end up doing that with their amazing teams. But the growth pattern that we've seen Rutgers experiencing here in recent years, the trajectory of where their program has begun to go, leads me to believe this is going to be the best season in this iteration of Greg Schiano at Rutgers. And if they end up being a 9 or a 10 win squad or something like that, how could you not consider Greg Schiano for Coach of the Year? Especially because some of their key players on that amazing defense are banged up during the offseason and make a key acquisition at QB. But if everything kind of comes together in the way I think it might for Rutgers, Schiano is going to be my guy.
Yeah, Mohamed Toure, a big part of that defense, won't be with them this season due to an early injury. If they can overcome that and win, like you said, 9 games feels realistic for the Scarlet Knights, which is saying something. Next up, your offensive player of the year. Almost always it goes to a quarterback.
Usually. Most
of the time to Ohio State. Who are you going with?
This one might surprise folks, but I was swayed a bit by what I heard Luke Fickell saying in Indianapolis at Big Ten football media days, because the offensive line for Wisconsin, which was a lot of the storyline last year where folks wondered why the run game didn't look exactly like we anticipated it would for much of the season. He took a very physical approach over this offseason, and the return of Chez Mellusi to the lineup, healthy, I believe he's going to have a fantastic season. And what he'll be able to do in making sure that his quarterback, the new quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, won't have too much pressure on his shoulders. There's enough experience at returns. But as much as anything, the approach from Phil Longo, I think, will lead to Chez Mellusi, who, when he's been healthy, man, he has been so combustible as a talent in the open field. And the ferocity that he runs with, the offensive line feeds off of that. And so I think on the whole, if there's any one player in the conference that'll impact the success and failure of his team, it's hard to argue, in my opinion, that there's anyone more impactful than Chez Mellusi.
I did not see that coming, man.
Yeah.
If you had 25 other people who study the Big Ten like you do, how many of them would pick Mellusi, you think, as offensive player there? Right?
Zero. Yeah.
That's a fascinating pick.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned he has been injured. 3 straight years he's been injured. You're not worried about that coming up a 4th year?
I'm worried. I'm pensive about it. But, I mean, he's put in all the work, all the requisite work you want to put in over the offseason. And we've seen stories like this before where the player has that last best opportunity to sort of seize the moment. And when he's been out there, he is exceptional as a talent, as a runner. And because the program on the whole feeds off of Chez Mellusi in that way, I do think that a healthy version of him can be the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. And yes, I'm expecting him to be able to maintain health. And he will have a running back mate in the backfield that will share some of the load with him.
Right. Yeah, man, I mean, even a running back, I would have thought, oh, maybe he's going to go Donovan Edwards or maybe Trevion Henderson. All right, keep the tape.
Yes.
Producer Rob, keep the tape. Let's bring this back in December and see if you were right. How about Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten? Who's it going to be?
This, to me, is a fun one because there are so many amazing options in this conference for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. But when you kind of factor in the scheme matched with the talent, matched with some of the storyline that would go, I'm going with Abdul Carter for my Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year because he's a guy who, you know, we know how amazing he's been. He's been All Big Ten multiple times, a lot of preseason All-America accolades going into this fall. But then the storyline of him switching positions where he had been an incredible off-ball linebacker in that attacking style with Manny Diaz leading the way. We see him making plays in pass coverage, the blitz ability that he showcased wearing the sticks. Folks know what that means in State College. So now moving up to what are more primarily, you know, not at all times, not 100% of the time, but being an edge defender, being more of a defensive end within the scheme of Tom Allen. He's still going to have that same attack, and we've seen him showcase a variety of pass rush moves that I think will very much suit the defensive end position and the way he can attack the opposing backfield. So it's going to be a defense littered with talent already. So I do believe Abdul Carter because he's a known commodity as a playmaker, and the position switch, when folks see him making plays, they're going to go gaga over it.
Well, I mentioned yesterday, I think he's the most exciting defensive player in the Big Ten. You mentioned today you think he'll be the best defensive player
Feeding off of
in
you,
the
Mike.
Big Ten. Well done. Freshman of the Year. There's a few intriguing names. Who's it going to be?
Because of part of the discussion we had earlier, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the shoulders of the quarterback position in Lincoln, and I believe Dylan Raiola is prepared to seize that moment. The maturity that we were talking about a bit earlier in the show matters a lot in this regard, because if you're going to be a freshman player of the year in the Big Ten Conference, it can be a running back more frequently or a wide receiver where there's, maybe some volume to the reception opportunities that you get. Certainly considered multiple other guys here, but I do anticipate high-level play from Dylan Raiola. Maybe not to the extent of some of the veterans in this conference, but he's one of the highest regarded recruits that Nebraska's had in decades, and especially to be at the quarterback position, they've accentuated and enhanced the talent that'll be around him as well. And Matt Rule, in talking to him, he marvels at the maturity, not just the sort of maturity in interacting with people and showing up early in the morning, but the maturity of his game. Dylan Raiola as a quarterback, some of the pre-snap recognition, some of the things he does mechanically are beyond his years. So I do believe we'll see a guy behind center for the Huskers that is going to be in a position to make plays. We'll see him grow and mature throughout the season and play at a level that I believe he'll win this award.
He is the highest ranked Husker recruit in the internet era, higher than Ndamukong Suh or anybody else they've had. I will say Jeremiah Smith is the #1 overall recruit.
Right.
And the reason you didn't take him, I assume, is because he's got so many other wide receivers.
He's going to share the load.
Right.
He's going to share the load a lot. He's going to have his fair share of highlights, but it'll be a shared sort of a highlight package that he'll have with other Ohio State players.
Every year in the Big Ten, there is a game so special, it's called the game. It is Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you pick that. So outside of that, what's going to be the game of the year this year?
Well, we will see fairly early in the season two teams who are in the championship picture, not just the Big Ten championship picture, but the national championship picture when Ohio State travels to Eugene, faces the Oregon Ducks. We don't have a catchy nickname for it, but we have seen the Ducks and the Bucks match up on occasion. Ducks and Bucks, the Duck and Buck Bowl? I don't know. We got to figure out something. The Agricultural Bowl. Who knows what we'll call it? But that's going to be the game of the year because of the implications going into it. And then, frankly, we may see it a second time later in the Big Ten championship game. We may even see it a third time in the college football playoff. Who knows? But that first time we see it and the magnitude of what that game will feel like going in, knowing that everyone at Autzen Stadium is going to be a fever pitch with Ohio State coming to town, then yes, I believe when you look at the whole scope of the season, that will be the game of the year. That is not named the game.
Bucks and Ducks, we'll call it the Dollar Bill Bowl.
Ooh,
Bucks, Dollar Bill, Duck. By the way, that same day, you also have Penn State at USC and Washington at Iowa. That's going to be an unbelievable week of Big Ten football. Most improved team in the Big Ten this year is going to be...
I'm surprised that more folks haven't gotten on the Purdue sort of bandwagon yet or riding that Boilermaker train, because we've seen a lot of talent acquired over the offseason by Ryan Walters. And for him in his second season, you think back to the time that he was in Champaign as the defensive coordinator. The first season for that Illinois defense didn't look so good. First season for his Missouri defense didn't look so great when he was there either. But year two was when he had started to sort of stack those chips, build those bricks, and I anticipate something similar happening with Purdue's defense in this particular season. But he's also got Hudson Card as a returning starter at quarterback. Yes, they've lost a lot of talent at wide receiver in the transfer portal, but they have added some as well. And he's got a system led by his offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, that will put up yards, that will put up points. So I think you'll now see a more complete version of Purdue, and that completion will be accentuated by the fact that we saw the best Boilermakers run game last year that we've seen in years. So I love the fact that now Ryan Walters will have new talent, fresh talent, and a system in place that will have continuity.
And they added Reggie Love, the Illinois leading running back last year, to go with Maccabee this year. If that defense can make a big jump forward from the 30 points per game they allowed last year, I love that. Purdue could be really fun to watch this season. So that were your awards, your preseason awards from Monsieur Heron. But what about his power rankings in the Big Ten? That is coming up in moments.